Hey everybody, I'm Amanda with DevExpress, and welcome to our last 14.1 launch webinar, What's New in DevExtreme 14.1 with DevExpress CTO, Julian Bucknall. You'll see the new products and features shipping inside DevExtreme 14.1, including our new HTML5 data grid widget, new multi-purpose UI widgets, and updated data visualization tools. Thank you so much for joining us. I will now hand things over to Julian Bucknall.
Thank you, Amanda, and welcome everybody to What's New in 14.1, and it's the DevExtreme edition. I hope everyone's having a good day. I certainly am. It's been awesome so far. So let's continue. So DevExtreme, we've had it out for a little while now, a year or maybe a year and a half or so, and it's always been geared towards the mobile developer. With 14.1, we're now expanding DevExtreme to suit more developers who are essentially creating applications for, say, tablets or the desktop. So DevExtreme 14.1 is a release where DevExpress as a whole has been refining the controls that it has within the suite, within the product. By refining, I mean essentially making it easier for you, the developer, to create modern user interfaces, modern user experiences with our controls, so that you can then give your end users something which you're proud of, and it doesn't look like it derived before the Y2K and all the rest of it. So 14.1 is about that kind of thing, and it's also about adding our usual new features, new enhancements, and so on and so forth. So we'll be seeing a little bit of both of those with this particular DevExtreme webinar. So DevExtreme. As Amanda mentioned, we have a new complete client-side data grid. All the usual functions, as we'll be seeing in a moment, the kind of things that you want to give your end users so that they have some kind of analytical capabilities so they can look at their data and extract information from it. We'll be looking at that in a moment. So the new data grid, we've done a lot of work over this particular release to optimize our widgets for web applications. Now, what do I mean by that? It's essentially, the widgets that we created before were very much geared towards the mobile space, especially the smartphone space. If you've used DevExtreme in the past or looked at it in the past, we have a whole bunch of widgets for DevExtreme, and they were all essentially optimized for that mobile application. So things like the gallery, you swipe with your finger left and right. It's optimized so that lists are optimized for smartphones, and so on and so on and so on. So what we've done is we've taken all those widgets and leaving the optimization for the mobile side, but also optimized it for the desktop side. We realize that people are creating web applications for desktop browsers, so your Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, Safari even. So we've done some work towards optimizing these widgets to make them look good and to work well within that kind of desktop environment. So you're thinking keyboard and mouse as well as touch. We've added a CSS theme builder to DevExtreme so that you can take one of our original themes for DevExtreme and then modify it. In this particular version, it's essentially about color, it's about fonts, and modifying it so that maybe, for example, you're replicating the colors in your logo, your company logo, as an example. We'll see that again in a moment. We've added some new framework features to the application framework, which is the basis of DevExtreme. As I've said in the past, we've concentrated more on the smartphone space. So this particular release, there are new capabilities now for creating applications, single-page applications for tablets and for desktop. And if you think about it, you know, a smartphone is a very small screen. You can only do so much, display so much on the screen, and with a tablet and with the desktop, you have, you know, rather more space. So it doesn't make sense to have essentially a single pane on the screen. It makes sense to have several panes and you know, be able to create applications which say use a navigation kind of pane on the left-hand side of the screen with some pane showing some data on the right-hand side. Data visualization improvements. This we're talking about the charting product of DevExtreme. I've added a couple more charting types, and we've been doing some optimizations inside the charting product as well. And there are other enhancements product-wide, mostly in the realm of performance. So let's just basically leave it like that. Oh, there is one thing that I always forget at this point, and I think it was Mehul who reminded me last time, is that one of the enhancements we have is the ability to switch from landscape to portrait and have a different look and feel for landscape versus portrait. So that's one of the enhancements we have. So let's fire up the demo center. And here it is, the demo center for DevExtreme. We have a demo center for each of our main platforms, and with DevExtreme in 14.1 we now have a demo center for that product especially. And what I'm going to be showing you is, first of all, let's have a quick look at the data grid. The data grid is one of the biggest things, if you like, for DevExtreme this time around. We were asked for it in previous versions. We needed it for our new dashboard type viewers, and I believe that Seth talked a little bit about that on, I can't remember which date it was now, Tuesday or something like that. Anyway, so DevExtreme, the data grid. First of all, I mean, a grid is fairly simple. You know, it's a tabular structure. But if you're writing a client-side data grid, you have to basically make sure it's a pure HTML table. So we have TDs and TRs and, you know, the T-head and the T-foot and all that kind of stuff. Now, with a grid, there is always the issue of how to get the data into the grid. And with the DevExtreme data grid, we have a couple of ways of getting the data in there. All we really require from our data is it to be in a JSON format. So it's a JSON object, it's got an array, and we don't really care with the data grid where this data is coming from. Yeah, it could be ASP.NET. Yeah, it could be some kind of web service. It could be PHP. So long as we get a JSON object which contains an array, we're good. We're good to go. We can do some, you know, display work and all that. This particular demo here shows the paging capability of the data grid. This is the simple paging. So we have down here the number of records per page. So by a page, I mean how much data, how many records we actually get from the service, the data service that is providing this data. So if I say I want 5 records at a time, then hey, data service, give me 5 records. If I want 10, then 10. You notice that the grid itself is geared towards 10 rows. So here I'm asking for 20 rows, and as I page, what happens here is I'm getting another 20 records. And I click again on the paging indicator here, and I get another 20 records. But I'm only seeing 10. Now, this is where, unfortunately, we have a slight problem with GoToMeeting. Is notice that as I move my cursor, my mouse cursor, into the grid, a scroll bar appears. And as far as I remember from when I was watching other webinars on this topic. On GoToMeeting, the scroll bar looks a little weird, and I hasten to add this is solely due to the the app creating a screen view, and it's on the actual application itself. It looks very beautiful. So the scroll bar has disappeared. I move my mouse inside the grid. The scroll bar appears, or the scroll bar thumb appears, and I can grab it and then move between the 20 records I have per page. So there's not only the page that you see, there's also the page of records behind that. So that's the simple paging, and as I go through here and I find the second page of 20 records, notice there's a loading panel that appears indicating that we're going back to the service to get more data. So I'm emphasizing here essentially that what is happening with the data grid is that it's just getting the records it needs per page. It's not trying to download all records. So if there are 100,000 records behind this, and they're not, there are only 80, you wouldn't be waiting there for a long time with a load panel wondering what the heck is going on. Now that's the old style paging, if you like. These days, people tend to use a different type of scrolling, and I'm thinking here especially of something like the Facebook timeline. It's essentially presenting to the end user a list of records, a list of items that is endless. But the user doesn't know that, and he basically says, okay, well, let's start scrolling down. Oh, well, yes, I just scrolled to that particular point, but let's scroll down here. And as I scroll down, what's going to happen is the data grid, oops, I ought to be inside the grid. The data grid will, every now and again, let's see if I can get it to trigger. Oh, yeah, there we go. Well, I can see this, and the problem is you may not, but the grid looks blank now because it's basically asking for data. I'm still paging down, so it just basically says, okay, we'll wait till he stops paging down, and then I can show him the latest data that I've got from the data service. So it's as if the record list, the items are infinite in scope, and the end user basically just views it as an endless list. It doesn't have to worry about, oh, am I on the 5th page? Do I need to look at the 6th page? There's no paging indicator. There's just the scroll bar, as I say. So that's virtual scrolling. That's also enabled within the data grid. And again, just to kind of re-emphasize, this is all about not downloading the entire data set from the data service to display within the grid, within the table. Now, I mentioned before, so that's how to get the data in. I mentioned before that part of the features of a grid is all about the operations in the grid. And what happened there? Demo demon. It's all about the operations you can do within the grid to basically convey information rather than just displaying a bunch of data. So one of those is the ever familiar sorting capability. So just by clicking on the column header, I can sort the data by that column. So here I'm clicking on last name, it's pointing upwards, so we're ascending, which is what we have here. If I click again, the arrow goes down, we're now descending order, and that's the first, I might almost say, obvious way of analyzing your data is to make sure that you have it in the order you want to see it. The next one is slightly more complicated than that, and that is grouping. Grouping is where you basically are trying to create this almost like a tree list of data, where you have some kind of hierarchical view of the data. Here I've got a hierarchy of country, so I'm viewing my records in country order to begin with, but also grouped by country. So I can collapse the group just like this, just by clicking on the, or if this were a touch screen, and it isn't, I'm afraid, you could actually touch the little triangles, or expanding a particular group. And not only does, we do have one level of grouping, we have several levels of grouping. So let's group by country and city. Argentina, we only have on this particular data set Buenos Aires as a city. In Austria, we have two cities. We have Graz and Salzburg. So this is another way of playing around with your data to glean some information out of it, rather than just blankly looking at a bunch of data. The other thing that's kind of obvious with this one is you can rearrange the columns. So I'm more interested in where the company is and where the company is within which country. I didn't say that very well. I do apologize, Amanda. So you can basically regroup or reorder, I should say, the columns to suit the kind of information you're trying to glean out of this particular set of records. So let's go back to grouping by country. Now, what's actually happening in this particular example is we are doing the grouping in the data grid. And what that means is we are downloading all of the records into the data grid. There are not that many records here. So the initial download of the data was fairly quick. So we're doing all the work, if you like, inside the grid. Downloaded all the records, we can group, we can do all of this analyzing of the data actually on the client side within the browser. Now, as I said before, if you have a few 100,000 records, then this is just not going to work. Your end user will give up waiting for the initial data download, and the browser will get probably a little upset about things as well. So the other capability that we have with the grid is what we might call remote grouping. In ASP.NET, this is better known as server mode. What we're doing here is the grid is basically going back to the data service. So the data service has to be a bit more intelligent at this point and saying, okay, the end user is, in this case, grouping by country and city. Please give me the data for the first page grouped by country and city. And in this case, there is an awful lot of data. So as you can see by the scroll bar thumb here, it's small compared with the scroll bar. There's a lot of data. I'm not quite sure how many records we have here, but I can just basically jump down a particular point. You see the loading panel, because the grid is going back to the data service and saying, hey, give me more data. This is the page I want. And the data service is having to do, if you like, the hard work of doing the grouping and presenting the grid with the relevant data and the relevant groups and all the rest of it. So again, we can play around with grouping or ungrouping. Every time we do this, we go back to the data service, and the data service provides us with yet more data for that particular page that we happen to be on. So at the moment, let's just leave that alone. We're down here in the data. Let's go all the way back up to the top again. And we can group now just by city. We go back to the data service, we get the data. So in essence, like every time you use something like server mode, you're playing off the initial horrible download of data versus lots of little downloads of data as the grid is being used. So that's grouping. Another great analytical feature is that every grid should have is filtering. So filtering is an easy way of extracting information or just looking at relevant records within a particular grid. What we do with the DevExtreme data grid is to provide an extra row that allows your end user to filter. So here we are. Let's filter by customer ID here. Oh, I don't know. Let's because I'm really interested in customer IDs that start with the letter V. I will basically do that. Oh, there they all are. So pretty simple for the for date column. We have a kind of calendar display here where you can easily select a particular date. I noticed that if we basically clear this thing, all our dates are in 1996. That's a kind of minor bug. I'm going to get the guys to change all these dates to something in 2014. Who cares what happened 18 years ago? But at least you can see the principle that we have a drop down of a calendar, so we can just enter a date, or obviously, let me see, greater or equal to, let's say 7/1/1996, which was kind of boring. Let's go 8. There we go. So I could type in the date as well, rather than just using the drop down here. Freight, here we have a slightly different column. It's a numeric column, so we have some, less than, greater than type comparisons. The name column, notice, has no filter capability, so it's been turned off for the name column. That's kind of interesting, as we'll see in a moment. The city has a very simple type filter here, and the country, although it looks like you can filter, I don't think you can. So if I put a G, oh, you can. I tell a lie. So if I put France, it should find French. There we go. Let me just reset this because one of the things I want to show now is another way of filtering information. So we're just showing France, we'll just delete it, and we go back to the original list of data here. Now we have a search capability within the grid as well, which applies a kind of global filter. So let's have a look for let's have a look for something which STO. Now, the reason I chose STO is not only because, hey, it found STO inside this city, San Cristobal, but if I go back and show on the first page, there is this name of Quick Stop. This STO was not found because the name column has no filtering capability. So this search feature of the grid applies to only those columns which can be filtered, is what I'm trying to get across. So STO doesn't find Quick Stop in this column, but it does find the city of San Cristobal in the city column. So filtering, great way of drilling down into data, if you like, or just restricting the amount of data you see. So again, having that kind of basic analytical capabilities for the end user. So we've seen the basic stuff with sorting, with grouping, with paging. Let's have a quick look at editing now. Obviously a grid, unless you're doing read-only type stuff, generally involves some kind of the ability to change the data in the grid. And that's what this particular feature is talking about. We have an extra column here, which allows me to edit or delete particular rows. We have an extra column over here, which allows me to flag certain rows, or if you like, select them. And I can, if you like, delete those selected records. There, they're all gone. Oh, I just remembered Janet spells her name differently. It's Jeanette, and I save. notice the column or this particular cell has changed so that so you can actually save the data that you've just changed and so on. I'm going to add a new record here. So it's master Julian Bucknall, and I'm the CTO. I'm not going to tell you my birth date, but it was quite a while ago. And we'll just hit save on that. Oops, scrolling inadvertently. So there I am. And I believe sorting's enabled here, so I can, sort these records as I wish. So that's the basic row editing or the capability of editing data within the grid is on a row-by-row basis. You saw it just then, but we do have capabilities for row selection. We can just basically click on a row, and there's an event that fires, and we can do something about that particular row. In this case, we're displaying down here a little panel of information about this particular record. So as we go through, you can see what's happening here. But the other one is a kind of the multiple record selection, which I've just briefly shown you, is this capability of having an extra column, and you allow the user to touch or click items, rows, and select them to produce this multi-select type thing. But a nice, interesting one that I kind of like is the ability to, through the API, say, well, select me all records that are for Mrs. Well, that's really boring. Select all records for Mr. There we go. And we see all those records have been selected for us through the API. And we have this kind of clear selection type thing. So yeah, the column with the checkboxes to multi-select, or through some kind of API where you're basically saying select all or select something, so you have some kind of filtering capability. The last one I want to show you for this particular widget is the state persistence. This shall be changed very soon to say persistence. So we're basically going to be showing here that the grid will store its state. In other words, it will store information about how the data is being viewed. It won't store any information about the data per se, but it will store information about column order, column widths, grouping, and all that kind of fun stuff. So for this particular example, let's just say I want to shrink this. Whoops. Let's move the ship name over here. Let's what else can we do? Let's shrink it a little bit. The order date is really too big. Let's shrink that, and we'll leave freight where it is. Maybe bring the city down here. And what I'm going to do now is I've got some grouping. I've got ordering columns. I've got some different column sizes. I'm just going to refresh the page and come down here and notice that without any coding whatsoever, and you have to trust me on this because it's a demo after all, there was no coding at all. The grid has basically saved that kind of structural information, the state of the grid itself. And when I refreshed, it worked out that it had to reorder things, and so we now just show the ship country as the grouping. We have ship name and ship city, reordered. The order date, I forgot to mention, is actually sorted out ascending order, so it's still ascending order, and so on and so forth. So this is a great feature for your end users. You can provide this basically for free, and your end users will well, thank you for it, because they won't go into a a page that they've seen a million times and it is changed back to the default. They will see what they left it as. I don't know when anybody actually has the same feeling about Facebook, where have this show most recent versus show timeline, and until quite recently, the show most recently basically just that option just kind of got forgotten. Anyway, that's by the way. So storing the state or persisting the state is one of the features of the data grid. So one of the things about 14.1 that we really wanted to do was to show people how easy it is to create these modern user experiences. And one of the things we did was to create data, sales data, employment data, for a fictitious company called DevAV. And we spent a lot of time creating this data and making it consistent and all the rest of it. And then we created applications on every platform which basically showed you, our customers, how to create an application for this particular fictitious company. And what I want to do now is to jump back to the demo side of things here. This demo here, the DevAV demo, let's quickly go through it. And this is how to create a client-side application that uses data that we've created for this audio-visual manufacturer, essentially, or reseller or something like that. So this company has products, it has customers, it has employees, it has tasks for those employees. And what we're trying to do here is to show you with, in this particular example, with DevExtreme, what you can do already with the widgets and the application framework that you get as part of DevExtreme 14.1. Notice, first of all, it is a desktop browser application. I'm inside Firefox at the moment. There we go. And here we are. It's an application. It looks pretty good. But notice it's a business application, and here we have a grid. And if you remember from my demo just now, I'm selecting a record and something's happening down here. We have this tabbed page here, so we can show things like a chart, images to go with this, and it's a scrollable type thing. So all of these widgets are part of DevExtreme, and what we've done is to wrap them up in an application that you might want to write, or that you would feel is a valid application, a valid business app for your particular company, for example. So we have this kind of navigation thing on the side, whereby we're filtering information. We can sort this by clicking on the column header. There's no grouping allowed here at the moment. I can do let's go back to all over here. And we have the search capability. So if I type plus here, we see all the products with plus in it, and so on. So we have the column with just a checkbox in it, and so on and so forth. We jump over to customers. You see the same kind of thing. Here we're actually grouping. So let's group with. Come on. Oh, I've only allowed one grouping level in this particular application. So again, we have the grid. Again, we have some kind of scrolling thing going on here. We have the ability to switch pages, not through a tab now, but through a drop down. So these are the stores for Supermart of the West. And these are the contacts that this particular company knows about for Supermart of the West. And here we can see an edit dialog, a data entry type dialog. I'm editing this particular contact, so we can show off the data entry widgets that we have in DevExtreme. So she got married, good old Verda. And what else have we got in here? Drop downs. We have numeric entry and so on and so forth. She moved to San Diego. We can save. The demo doesn't actually do any saving, but at least the button's there and all that kind of stuff. Oh, and the button is also part of DevExtreme. Employees, what do I say special about this particular one? Yeah, basically showing this kind of templating going on here as I select items as I go through. And what else have we got? Tasks, same kind of thing. Oh, is there yet another type of grid here where I can click edit on an item and basically show some of the other features that we have as part of DevExtreme, some of the other widgets. So we have a widget with an image, for example, a drop down with an image. And we have the slider here that we can grab. And again, I'm using my mouse here because I don't have a touch screen on this particular machine. But these are all touch capable. And notice, things are fairly big because, fingers are fat compared with mice. So I can quote save unquote. But this is the kind of application you can now write with DevExtreme that is modern in appearance. It's got a great user experience. It's touch capable. It's, I don't want to say state of the art, but state of the art. It's a way for you to basically have a look and see how we did it. We're going to be creating tutorials on how to recreate these applications. So one for DevExtreme, there's one for ASP.NET, there's one for WinForms, there's one for WPF. So we'll be hopefully fairly soon creating a bunch of tutorials on how to recreate the look and feel of these applications. So watch out for that. No, I was where was I? There. So that's DevEV. Realtor is another demo which has a tablet version and so on and so forth. I'll skip most of those and just go back to this, or go to this green item here, the theme builder. This is a new feature in DevExtreme 14.1 where the scenario is you like our base themes, but you want to make it your own. And as I said before, it's mostly about color, it's mostly about typography. So let's just quickly play around. You basically select a base theme. We have light and dark. Light and dark are our desktop themes. There's one for iOS 7. There's a couple for Android, and a couple for Windows 8. So we'll go with light, since that's where we started. Over here on the right-hand side, we have a bunch of widgets already pre-populated with data, and we're going to be playing around with, to begin with, the highlight color, which is the dark gray that we have here so far. Now, I'm getting into having a kind of darkish red. I'm liking that kind of warm color. So we'll change the highlight color to that darkish red. And because I'm choosing red, I also change the overall hue of the theme to another type of red. So we'll go for a fairly light red. So we'll apply that. And notice once I've applied that, the various changes. So these highlights are a little red now, and this is a little red, and these are a little red. And the column header actually changed to a red, and this is a very light red. And notice it's not just this color. What has actually happened is we have a color algorithm, if you like, in the background, which selects hues or different colors based on the the functionality of the elements within the widgets. So, for example, if I go over to our good old friend, the data grid, these are all the different kinds of colors or different elements, if you like, colored elements that you can set within a data grid. And notice, although that I've only created, basically defined 2 colors at this point, it's actually used the algorithm within the theme builder to create several different hues based upon those reds, according to what those elements are going to be used for. Now, I'm pretty useless designer, so I'm going to take the header text color here, and I'm going to say I really like this kind of lilac. I think column headers in lilac are the best thing, and so I can change it. At that point, I'm basically saying, to the algorithm behind all this, ignore what you think. This is what I think, and this purple is great. What other things are we going to do? We can change the font family. So it's the standard non-serif font. So I could, if I was really nutty, I could go for Times New Roman, because that's the way I do things. And press, was it comma? I can never remember. Yes, it is comma. Press enter. There we go. And yeah, so now we'll go back to my data grid. It looks awful. Don't do this. Non-serif fonts are great on the web, but there we are. I'm just showing you the ability to do things like changing fonts and all that. So the theme builder is a great little tool, but obviously you need to be able to apply it to your own applications. You can do it in 2 different ways. One is just to get the CSS, and what we do here is to create this CSS file with every single CSS selector we use within DevExtreme. So here's that Times New Roman that I set, and as you go through, there's thousands of selectors here. This is do not do this, by hand, is what I'm trying to say. Scroll view, pull down image, and so on. Wow, and so on, and so on, and so on. You can do it that way, and what you do is basically save that CSS into a CSS file, replace the one that we provide with this one, and your application would have your new theme. Yeah, a little dodgy. The other way of doing it is to export it as metadata. What you do there is you provide the metadata to the application at runtime through an HTML tag, and the runtime, the application framework, will take that metadata and apply it at runtime to the CSS. And in this case, you wouldn't be changing permanently the CSS file. It just gets applied at runtime. And that's by far the best way of using this kind of theme. You're not altering the theme files at all. So, theme builder, new part of DevExtreme 14.1. Let me drag this out of the way. Oops. Next thing I want to show you is nope, don't want to do that. Okay, let's go that. Next thing I have to show you is what we've done about the charting side of things. So let me just find the chart and visualization stuff. There we go. Bring this back. There we go. So on the charting side of things, a couple of new examples here of charts. This chart is for those cases where you have a lot of values, but the majority of the values are very small. So what you'd rather do is to show the big values, if you like, in your pie chart, and then have this others pie. So we call this the top N pie chart, or grouping small values. So here we have, the top internet languages. We have English at 56, Japanese, German, Russian, and everything else is less than, in fact, 5%. And we just aggregate them into one, other pie, other slice, I should say. And we have the same thing going on with, the donut top N type thing. So again, we have the visualization as the chart is shown. There is a visualization that happens. The slices appear, and it's very nice and visual, and it's pleasing to the end user. Very kind of modern look to it. So here we have, even less information, or rather less top values when you have 3 top values. And everything else just thrown into the others slice. One of the things which I didn't know until I saw Seth show it as part of the dashboard is this great thing for our Choropleth map. So here's the map, and we're showing bubbles on the map to represent, certain data, whatever the data happens to be. So what these values are, I have no idea. Maybe populations or something like that. But the interesting thing about this is we've got this kind of overlap thing going on over here, so we can basically drill down and the bubbles start separating. So the bubble markers are a way of showing information on the map very cleanly, and you're able to zoom into the map and zoom out of the map and all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing which is kind of fun. And the one I actually prefer is the same markers, but this time they're displayed as pies. So we have pie charts all over our map here. Yes, we're having overflow situations, but again, you can basically drill down into the map and to separate out these different pies. I think this is kind of religious affiliations within a country or something like that. So, but the whole point about this is we're showing information on the map itself, and it's just a great way of visualizing this kind of information or this kind of data very easily to gain information. So what's the blue? I'm going to guess it's Christian. So Christian, very, very Christian here, and as we go over towards the east, becomes less and less so. And I've just noticed somebody in our development team can't actually spell, but we're moving right along. So those are the kind of new features for the charting side of things, and I think that's about all I can show today. So one thing I want to kind of get across is DevExtreme is built to be used. We are using it internally for our JavaScript sites. If you go to js.devexpress.com, let me do that right now. Let's go back over here and just go to js.devexpress.com. This particular page and all subsequent pages are actually built with DevExtreme. So we're basically saying DevExtreme is now a product that not only, as it did in the past, create mobile applications for smartphones and tablets and what have you, but also these days for desktop browsers, for creating great-looking modern applications, web applications, pure client-side, for the web. So, not like Haskell. Okay. So DevExtreme, with 14.1, because we've expanded it so much, we've actually changed the way we provide it, we sell it. There are several new SKUs now. The first one is DevExtreme Mobile, $249.99 per developer per year. And this one is all about creating those mobile apps for smartphones. The application framework is there. You get the widgets for pages within your single page application, and that's DevExtreme Mobile. In the past, it used to be called Phone.js. The next one is DevExtreme Web. This is the same kind of concept as DevExtreme Mobile, but this one contains the charting, it contains the application framework, and it contains the widgets, but optimized for web applications, by which I mean the desktop browser. And finally, we have DevExtreme Complete, which contains both of those. So you get everything with DevExtreme Complete. And with all of them, you get the Visual Studio plugin, so you can create your applications within Visual Studio, just like before, essentially, but now geared to the web for desktop as well. Thank you for being here and listening in. I do hope it was helpful for you, and see you soon, I hope.
Awesome. Thank you, Julian. All right, if you missed any of our 14.1 webinars this week, they are all recorded and available online at devexpress.com/webinars. We have WinForms and WPF, reporting and dashboards, and ASP.NET Web Forms and MVC all posted for you to watch at your own convenience. We also have a 3-part ASP.NET webinar series starting next Tuesday, June 10th, with technical evangelist Don Wibier, walking you through how to create an ASP.NET blog engine with DevExpress. And you can feel free to register for that series or any upcoming webinars also at devexpress.com/webinars. And that is it for this one. If you haven't already, please download and try 14.1 today. And just a reminder, when you leave this webinar, you will see a short survey. Please take a second to comment. We really appreciate it. All right, thanks to Julian. Thank you all for joining us. And of course, thank you for choosing DevExpress. Bye-bye.